It's time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Bill Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network on a Talking Tuesday from downtown Columbia, but spreading out across the state of South Carolina. Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, Professor Tom Hayes, Brian Leonard, all at your service tonight. Busy show. We've got, of course, a lot of football to talk about. Basketball tonight, too, as USC's in action at home against Norfolk State, part of the Naismith tip-off event. See if maybe somebody can get a rebound for the Gamecocks.
Could have TJ Moss back tonight. Apparently, he is warming up, so that could be some welcome relief to the Gamecock backcourt.
Maybe not.
But they need help. They need help on the front line. Is the problem?
As far as the football goes, I was at USC. Will was at Clemson, and it's senior night for both this Saturday night. It's also going to be military appreciation night for both, and so there'll be a lot of festivities prior to the respective games. At USC, 20 seniors will be honored, but a couple of interesting notes that Will Muschamp passed along today. Nick Harvey is not going to walk with the seniors. They are attempting to get him another year of eligibility, so he will not walk with the seniors. However, Eldrick Thompson will walk with the seniors, but they're trying to get another year of eligibility for him, which they should. The poor guy has hardly played in 2 years at USC. And then there's Donnell Stanley, who will also walk with the seniors, but he already has an extra year of eligibility. He has a 6th year available to him, and so a decision is up to him as to whether or not he wants to come back and use that, and that's something that will be decided sometime after the bowl game, according to Muschamp.
And according to Clemson, they will have 29 honorees of people who are currently on the roster. They have 4 guys who are medically retired, including Richard Jurgen, who you remember had to quit playing football earlier this year. There's one guy in particular, Corn, who will be honored for a 2nd time. Christian Wilkins, if you remember, walked last year on senior day. Wasn't necessarily sure whether he would come back or not. The way Clemson does this is a little bit different. They do it by your academic standing, not necessarily by your eligibility. So guys who are either eligible to graduate in this year or have already graduated or will graduate in December, those are the ones who will take the walk, and 29 of those will make that happen. And a win on Saturday for Clemson, Corn, could give them 51 wins as a senior class, which is now going to surpass the most ever by a class of seniors in ACC history, eclipsing last year's senior class that had 50.
The conversation at USC today, and you'll hear from Muschamp, you'll hear from Sweeney coming up. We'll take your phone calls, 800-956-7266. Go ahead and dial us up, first in on the program tonight. The conversation at USC was kind of twofold. One was about tackling and why they tackled so poorly against Florida, especially in the final quarter of the loss to the Gators on Saturday. Maybe it's a case of running out of players. Maybe it's a case of wearing down. Maybe it's a case of just fundamentals. I think it's probably a combination of all. Another subject to discussed was the play calling. And, Muschamp sticking to his guns for the most part in that they made good calls. He believes and he trusts in Jake Bentley in running those RPOs and making the right decisions. And maybe going back and looking at it, you might see 1 or 2 things here or there. But for the most part, I don't think, in his opinion, he would have changed anything that they were trying to do. Now, execution and blocking properly, that's a whole nother thing. But in terms of the actual play call and what they were trying to do, he feels like the things were there. It's up to the linemen to create the lanes and the receivers to run the right patterns, and don't drop the football as Brian Edwards did on that last possession that would perhaps have given them a start to getting a drive going on that last possession.
I still prefer, either even in the first quarter or fourth quarter, a little bit more eye candy, some guys in motion or whatever, get the defense to think about something. Because let's face it, a lot of times a big play is just one false step away, including the guy that took one false step on that short pass to Debo and missed the tackle because he moved in too quickly and he missed the tackle. So little things just get people awkward. As far as the defense is concerned, again, as I said before, I think football season is a heavyweight fight. And every time you tackle a play, you're going to get a little bit worn down. And South Carolina, even in their wins, their defense stayed on the field too long. You rarely see them get a 3 and out.
Yeah, that's the thing. Speaking to your point that you made yesterday on, what was most to blame, and I know that you said that, Corn, that 31 points should be enough to beat that Florida team. It's not like they stopped counting after 31. One would think that it wouldn't have taken 48 points to beat Ole Miss, but that's just how good their offense was against South Carolina's defense. It's not like it's volleyball and they stop scoring at 30 or ping pong and they stop it at 25. You play to where the game flow is, and whether or not the play calls were right or they were confident in their conviction of what they called, the execution was not there. And just from the look of it, from the side of it, and I watched the whole thing again last night because I stayed up late and I couldn't sleep. It just, from my mind and just watching it, they just looked passive for some reason on offense in the fourth quarter. It just appeared passive.
You caught it right there. I think they look passive, and I'll go back to my first statement. A team, a program like Florida, those guys say, are we going to lose 3 in a row, 2 straight at home? And they were fierce in that fourth quarter. They really showed that they were desperate. And South Carolina did not answer their desperation.
All right, 800-956-7266. This this story, I'm not laughing. It's not a funny story, but this story just coming down. The Georgia basketball team is going up to Philadelphia to play Temple tonight.
Uh-oh.
So they had to go from Athens to Anderson. They could not fly out of Athens today because of the weather. The plane transporting them out of Anderson, this according to the AJC, they boarded the plane at approximately 6:15 while the plane was taxiing on the tarmac at a slow rate of speed. It drove off the concrete and became stuck in the mud.
Oh.
This was last night. At 9 o'clock, it was determined the plane would need inspections. They would not allow it to be used Monday night. The team normally flies out of Athens, but runways are being repaved, diverting the team to fly out of Anderson to Philadelphia. So not a good start for Tom Crean and their first road trip. Just saw that coming down. But, having the Anderson tie there right here in our state, and didn't realize that they couldn't use the Athens airport and had to come over to Anderson to fly out. South Carolina basketball tonight. We mentioned the Gamecocks back at home, lost on Friday night to Stony Brook, a pitiful performance. And Frank Martin blasted his older players after the game for their efforts or lack thereof, especially when it came to rebounding. The Gamecocks were out-rebounded by 16 boards against Stony Brook, a former member of the Big South. Not sure what they're in now. Where are they in now?
They were the 5th place preseason selection out of the America East.
Well, that's just flat embarrassing. Now, I will say this again. It's basketball. It's never smart to draw complete conclusions about a team this early. I'm talking about a team at this level. Now, you look at the elite, they're going to play at a very high level. I mean, I look at the Dukes and the Michigan States and the Tar Heels and all those elite teams. Boy, they look light years away from what we see around here right now. But there is room for improvement, and they do have, it looks like, some young guys who are going to get better and have some talent. But gosh, if Silver and Kotsar and some of the veterans don't start playing like veterans, this team's not going to go anywhere.
The biggest problem is that a lot of those teams in the upper echelon can win on talent alone. South Carolina can't do that.
No.
They have to win on effort, and they have to win with their development. And the reason because of that is the fact that they just don't have the bodies that they had and they at least expected to have earlier in the year.
Plus the guys have to start stroking some outside shots. Reason why is Silver has to know that he's going to get a 2 and 3 player escort in the lane every time he goes in there because they're going to pack it in on him. That's why we see him at the line about a dozen times a game because they'd rather foul him than see him slam dunk it. But if you start to hit the 3 and bring the defense out, then he has room to operate.
His game needs to be just so much more simple than it is right now, because right now I think he's thinking too much.
His first game as a Gamecock was against Norfolk State 4 years ago. He had a pretty good opening game, and he's had a tremendous career, and I think he'll bounce back and get it together here as the season moves on. Okay, to your calls when we come back.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
It is a Talking Tuesday. Proverbially, we will hear from the coaches, but we also would like to hear from you to talk on this Talking Tuesday, 800-956-7266. A portion that is not part of the comments that we will share with you here was at least the line of questioning with Will Muschamp, talking about now fired Maryland football coach DJ Durkin. Muschamp said they are good friends, but he would not speculate on a hypothetical situation of a defensive opening on his staff and if he would hire him. This sparked a lot of big Twitter reaction on our Twitter at SportsTalkSC. Smokey says, I cannot see Ray Tanner even thinking about approving that hire. Now, if something happens to Derek Mason at Vandy, I'd love to have him on our staff. Goodness, this is from Billy. Goodness, how embarrassing that would be for this university. Maybe even more embarrassing than some of the other things that have happened with this university. Will Muschamp will stop at nothing on his quest to be a little bit better than mediocre. Is Zach Smith next? There's a lot of other reaction too. Someone said I said something about this a few weeks ago and had a South Carolina fan come at me when I say it. This would be a horrible look for Will Muschamp. Please do it. This is from a Clemson fan. And a lot of people, again, just saying, please don't, just don't. Nikki would like Brad Lawing possibly as a defensive line coach, put Lance over linebackers, Coleman Hutzler to special teams only. Again, this is all very hypothetical stuff. I don't even know if there's even a potential for a defensive opening on Will Muschamp's staff yet.
Possible. Have to wait and see what happens. Coaches after 3 or 4 years, they get the itch to want to move somewhere else, better deals, whatever the case may be. Now, the other national story, that was not a story. That was just a question that Muschamp didn't really spend a whole lot of time talking about. But Brett McMurphy today lit up Twitter on his site, the Stadium, with another story on Ohio State. Ohio State has fired back, threatening a lawsuit. In this case, I'm not going to go into the entire story. I've read it from top to bottom. It's a situation where he takes the words of a father of a former Ohio State player who's now at Florida, and he can't prove it based on the rest of the story. It's sort of a story that doesn't give you a conclusion, which is kind of a bad story.
It was involved in basically it was an altercation between coach and player, and
allegedly,
there was an alleged racial slur involved, and I think Ohio State came back and said that the altercation did happen, but the racial slur did not happen. I mean, it's a lot of.
They didn't say altercation; they said that there was
heated discussion,
something else. They didn't use the word altercation, but the story to me and Brett McMurphy, I thought did a great job on the first story about Zach Smith. And the situation with his wife and the various things involving Urban Meyer and the various stops at Florida and Ohio State and all that kind of stuff, even reaching out to touch Tom Herman at Texas now when he was at Ohio State. And, he seemed to have a lot of very strong evidence to support the position that or the point he was trying to make in his story. This story just seems sort of flim-flammy because on the one hand, you're taking the information from the father who allegedly, according to the ex-wife and apparently the son, they say they have no relationship with the father and haven't for a couple of years. Yet he has phone records, text message records that show the father and son having conversation at about the time all this took place. So there's a lot of information. There's a lot of disputed information. We don't know. I don't know after reading the story which side has any credibility in this case, but Ohio State has fired back and said that they deny these what they call unfounded allegations. Any allegations of racism are outrageous and false. The university told McMurphy they found no evidence to support these allegations. Reporting in this matter is irresponsible, inflammatory, a severe invasion of privacy of the student athlete and his family, as well as a baseless personal attack on Urban Meyer. It's regrettable that McMurphy and his employer would use such poor judgment in running this inaccurate story. And so, you read it and you, as a reader, you want to come to a conclusion when you read an investigative story like that. But I'm telling you, go read it. It's on Twitter. You can see the link to the Stadium. I think it's the name of his company or name of his website.
WatchStadium.com.
And you just can't, with an open mind, you just can't draw a conclusion as to who's telling the truth here, which My point is, why write a story like this if you're going to accuse somebody of something, but you can't prove it on the other side? Why even write a story like that?
And here's the other part of this too. This all comes on the heels of Zach Smith. I don't know if you saw this over the course of the last couple of days on his Twitter corner. He has left a trail of scorched earth behind him. A lot of unsubstantiated allegations toward his former colleague Tom Herman, the now Texas head coach, and as you like to put it, former South Carolina head coach, talking about
possibly
talking about alleged infidelity involving Tom Herman and his wife, and other allegations of that note, and just from the standpoint of just basically calling out everybody and their brother on Twitter when it comes to, basically his career that has been quote unquote ruined by people and other things. And I really I have no use for anything involving that program. It all seems just trash.
By the player in question in this case from Ohio State, who transferred to Florida, receiver Trayvon Grimes, he had 2 catches against the Gamecocks for 24 yards.
Yes.
I'd forgotten he was the guy that transferred, and he got immediate eligibility. So this is interesting. He transferred from Ohio State to Florida. Now, why did the NCAA grant him immediate eligibility? His mother, according to the stories, his mother has cancer. And, of course, the NCAA will give you a waiver if you have the case of a family situation that he apparently had. But the father in the story said he had no information or any idea that the mother was sick. He was questioning that. And so the mother, as part of the story, had to issue a statement, to support with doctor's information and all that she indeed has had cancer and been dealing with that. And it's just a complete and total mess. And my point is, if you're a reporter, why do you want to touch a story like that? I mean, unless you can draw it, we have the overwhelming evidence and proof to support what I am reporting, instead of just being right in the middle and creating this blow up that would seem to be so unnecessary, both in terms of the University of Ohio State and the family, the Grimes family, the kid, the mother, the father, the ex-husband. It's just unseemly.
Yeah, the first thing that comes out at you is McMurphy did a great job in Ohio State story. The coaching staff is still there. And it's almost like I'm going to come back and get you again. So that's what it looks like. It looks like negativity on
vendetta. I mean, I can see where Ohio State fans, could feel like this dude's got a vendetta against them, or he's just trying to drive Urban Meyer into the ground. To the phones we go, 800-956-7266. Let's hit Chuck in Spartanburg. Chuck, welcome to Sports Talk.
Hey, how you doing today?
Good.
Listen, I'm wanting to call about Frank Martin, and I'm getting kind of aggravated with that. I mean, he's had one good year since he's been there. I mean, now we lose to Stony Brook and Augusta, and I'm kind of disappointed. Recruiting's been terrible, and I'm just wondering, when is somebody finally going to put him on the hot seat and make him do something, or either it's time to change.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's been very bad. I think the recruiting's been bad. I think the product's been bad here. I mean, they had the great year 2 years ago. Give them credit for that. It all came together.
They had 2 good years. They should have been in the tournament the year before they went to the Final Four, and they didn't put them in.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But this is year what? 7? This is year 7. Should be showing a little bit more continuity in the program. There should not be these extreme highs and these low lows that they're going through right now in these very average years. And listen, I've harped on the in-state recruiting repeatedly, and I'm seeing Aaron Neesmith playing a lot at Vanderbilt, getting points. Of course, we see what Zion Williamson is doing.
You wouldn't harp on whether it was in-state or out-of-state. No matter who if they were winning, you wouldn't care whether they were from the in-state or out-of-state.
Well, I think if you're taking lesser players from out of the state compared to the players that you could have had in state,
I will say this: South Carolina shows to me how just about every other team except Kentucky and maybe Florida goes up in these cycles. Ole Miss is great one year, Mississippi State is up one year, and they go back down. Texas A&M will drop off this year.
My only question is, if you don't want him, who are you going to get?
Oh, I think they could find somebody.
I don't think you can find someone better
For a
than
few
him.
million.
Not better than him.
Mentioned Myrtle Beach Bowl.
So another day, another award for the Atlanta Braves. After getting a Rookie of the Year honoree for Ronald Acuna, tonight we find out National League Manager of the Year is none other than Brian Snitker, who edged out Milwaukee Brewers manager Craig Counsell for the honor tonight, Corn.
Could have gone either way with that. I mean, both of them had great years, unexpected.
One of the things you like about Snitker winning it, lifelong in the Braves organization, 30-something years, and even Mike Morgan didn't think he was going to get the job permanently, and then they saw that he really all those years knew how to nurture and teach young players, and they kept him, and this is the result.
The phone number, 800-956-7266. Lines are open. Just to go back on the previous caller for a moment and talk about South Carolina basketball and Frank Martin. I mean, I think that they are underachieving. I think that they did not build at all on their Final Four run. I mean, that was a great achievement, not taking a thing away. They played extremely well that entire season. They were well coached. Guys bought in and played their butts off and came together. The chemistry in that locker room and on that team was fantastic. They did not build on that. The recruiting did not go up. It did not go up again this time. And as a result, you're seeing a team with a revolving door of a lot of transfers, having to rely on a lot of freshmen when you should be relying on seniors and juniors. And it's just not a pretty picture. But now I still say it's just mid-November. There's plenty of time to get it together and kind of all come together. Maybe as these young guys play more and find their roles and find their niche, and the older guys get to where they are supposed to be, then it'll come together and they'll have a decent team. But you cannot, I mean, even losing an exhibition game to Augusta, okay, I know there were some other big-time programs that lost exhibition games. Okay, fine. Then you come out in your opening game and you slop it around. Then you come out in your second game and you get embarrassed at home. And now this is game number 3. And you're just not building up the faith in your following with these kind of performances.
Do they have a following?
Here's my thing on this whole situation. I think you have to allow for this freshman class to develop because it's one of the largest freshman classes he's had. And I know that, again, this is not something South Carolina fans want to hear when it comes to patience, but that's just what needs to happen at these schools that are not the blue bloods. South Carolina is not a blue blood basketball school. Yes, they play in a power conference, but you need time for development. And I think, when you had a 3-year period where you had to basically rid yourself from what had become of this basketball program, you needed the ability to try and weed out some bad actors and turn things around. They were able to, as you said, get into that situation in 15-16 where they probably should have been in the tournament and they played in the NIT. They go to the Final Four the following year, make a great run of the tournament. And again, they lost a lot. I think that the way last year's roster played out is not the way that Frank Martin would have wanted it. He thought he was going to get P.J. Dozier back, and they didn't account for that. And I think they tried to put a Band-Aid on it with some grad transfers and guys who they only had for very, very short time. I know they've brought a couple more transfers in, but again, it hasn't. You keep talking about this in-state recruiting problem. It's not like these guys are playing anywhere else in the state. It's not like they're losing them out to Clemson. They're losing them to other programs out of state. So in my mind, if they're not going to stay in state, they weren't going to stay anywhere. So from that standpoint,
that's not excusable. Just because you lose them out of state, you don't lose them to Clemson. That's not excusable.
Even just because they grow up in the state doesn't mean they want to play for South Carolina or Clemson. It doesn't work that way.
But you've got to change that mindset. You've got to be able to recruit in your own backyard.
You want to be a hypnotizer too? I mean, I don't know. What do you want? You want them to be a hypnotizer?
Well, I think that you've got to figure out why it is that so many players are leaving the state if you're South Carolina and Clemson. Okay. In the case of Zion Williamson, who he is, what he became, where he went. Okay. But South Carolina, for example, cannot be losing a player or actually 2 players to Tennessee that they had been recruiting extremely hard. How do you lose 2 guys that you made primary targets to Tennessee? Tennessee's no great basketball program. Now, Rick Barnes is a charismatic guy, and he's got him in they're on the uptick this year, ranked in the top 5. But they haven't been there for a long, long time. All of a sudden, everybody wants to go to Tennessee. You lose a guy from the state to Vanderbilt with a relatively new coach.
Rick Barnes has a lot more equity in this business than Frank Martin does.
Really?
He's got about 500 more wins.
How many Final Fours has he been to?
How many Final Fours has he been to?
Mm-hmm.
He has not been to one.
Okay.
Well,
what does the Final Four mean to you?
Well, you made such a big deal of the Final Four for Frank Martin.
He has won. He has won 661 games. He's going to be.
He's been a head coach a lot longer than Frank Martin.
I'm saying he has more equity in this business.
Yeah, but I mean, still, you're recruiting guys in your own backyard, and you're losing to Tennessee. I can understand losing them to
He does have a Final Four. Forgive me. He had one at Texas.
I think he did. Yeah.
That was Durant, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me something interesting coming out of Kansas from one of the reporters there for the Star. Of course, they're tracking now the search for a new football coach at Kansas, and they say the Kansas charter plane took off from Lawrence. Mm-hmm. The occupants entered on a side road not accessible to the public, did not see who was on the flight. Flight tracker has the plane destined for Baton Rouge, Louisiana tonight.
And I know that you're thinking it might be for Les Miles. My friend Ross Dellinger with Sports Illustrated said that is not the case.
Who's it then? Who are they going to see?
He doesn't
if
say
if that indeed is a flight heading to Baton Rouge at all.
Could be an assistant with LSU. Who knows?
Could be. All right, a few notes to pass along. Down in Myrtle Beach, they announced today the creation of the Myrtle Beach Bowl. Beginning in 2020, ESPN Events will own it. Coastal Carolina will kind of oversee it. It'll be played at Brooks Stadium, and it will involve teams from Conference USA, the MAC, and the Sun Belt. Each conference will participate up to 4 times between 2020 and 2025. Hunter Renfrow of Clemson, a finalist with a Burlsworth Trophy. This goes to the outstanding player in college football who began his career as a walk-on. The other 2 finalists are Cal running back Patrick Laird and Wyoming safety Marcus Epps. Stuart Mandel, bowl projections. This is he's with the Athletic.
Yes.
Stuart Mandel with the Athletic. He's got Clemson playing Notre Dame in Miami and Alabama playing Michigan in the Cotton Bowl. As far as South Carolina, got the Gamecocks playing in the Gator Bowl.
Even after the loss to Florida.
Even after the loss to Florida. Got the Gamecocks in the Gator Bowl because he's got LSU being an at-large pick going to the Fiesta Bowl, and he's got Georgia going to the Sugar Bowl. So that takes up 3 of your top teams from the SEC. And then going to the Citrus Bowl, he has got Citrus Bowl, he's got Florida. So there's your top 4. Kentucky, I would have thought Kentucky would have slid in there somewhere. He's got Kentucky. Where's he got Kentucky? I don't know, but he's got South Carolina going to the Gator Bowl.
Well, ever since
which wouldn't be a bad reward for this team.
It would. I don't know if necessarily it's deserved.
He's got Kentucky in the Outback playing Michigan State.
Yeah.
Well, here it goes. It goes to fan following it because ever since that connection has changed, and I think the SEC was out of the Gator Bowl pecking order for a while.
They were.
The Gator Bowl wanted South Carolina. And they went to the Outback Bowl.
SEC men's or women's basketball tournament will stay in Nashville beginning this season and going through 2035. The Tennessean reported that last night. The tournament at the Bridgestone Arena will be extended by 10 years. The men's tournament will be played in Nashville each year except 2022. The women's tournament will be there in 2022, so make your plans accordingly. And let's see.
Want to go to Tampa in 2022 for the men's tournament?
I like Tampa. Saturday Night Football, ABC, the Clemson-Boston College game averaged a total live audience of 3,930,000 viewers. USC-Florida game on ESPN averaged a total live audience of 2,068,000. That was up from the same window of last year. High school basketball, right around the corner. The Coaches Association has released preseason polls and top players. The number 1 team in 5A boys is Dorman. In 5A girls, it's Spring Valley. 4A boys is Ridgeview. Girls is North Augusta. 3A boys is Ridgeland Hardyville. Girls is Newberry. 2A boys, Gray Collegiate. Girls, Mullins. 1A boys, Hemingway. And 1A girls, Scotts Branch.
David Cutcliffe, this is the second week in a row that a opposing coach at Clemson has said that it's the best team he's seen ever. David Cutcliffe says Clemson might be the most complete team he's seen ever. And he said, Sunday you watch the tape and you're like, okay, I'm going to resign. There are no guarantees in life. Just happy you're in the arena playing them.
Ding, ding.
Well, listen, there's a lot to like when you look at the Clemson football team. If you're the opposing coach and you look at them on tape, where do you find a weakness on either side? And I guess we'll hear from Dabo when we come back.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
All right, first up on this Talking Tuesday, we will head to Clemson to check in on head coach Dabo Swinney. It'll be a second week in a row with both head coaches propping up the other. These are a pair of Alabama boys who are going off against each other tonight, or at least on Saturday night. David Cutcliffe of Duke and Dabo Swinney of Clemson. Here are the opening comments from Swinney, not only talking about Duke's head coach, but their sensational quarterback, Daniel Jones.
Let me tell you, we got a really good team we're getting ready to play. Duke's 7-3, and first of all, let me just say this. David Cutcliffe he's as good a coach as there is in the country, and he's a good friend, has been for a long time. He's one of my good friends in this business, and I just have so much respect for who he is, but what he's done at Duke is unbelievable. The consistency that he's established there, the program, the culture, watching their guys play and how they play, it jumps out at you as far as their belief in what they're doing, and that doesn't just happen. David has done an unbelievable job. I mean, he really has, and this is a really good football team. Like I said, 7-3 offensively. And we haven't played Duke in quite a while, and I haven't studied them very much. We haven't had a ton of crossover tape on them, so I got to tell you, I enjoyed it, but then I didn't enjoy it. Really going through and watching all of their tape. This is a good football team, a well coached football team, and they believe in who they are and what they do and how they do it. And they put their guys in position to be successful. But looking at them offensively, this quarterback is spectacular. I mean, he is. He's as good as there is in the country. I haven't seen everybody out there in the country, but he's as good as there is in the country. This kid, I cannot imagine, is not going to be a high draft pick. He's 6'5", he's 220. And he is accurate, and he has got a great arm strength. But he's a special player. And I think he had last week against North Carolina, he had one run for around 50 yards, had another one for 70 yards. I mean, he can run. He can pick them up and put them down. But incredibly impressed with their quarterback. And everything goes through him, the zone read, the reverse zone read, all the RPOs and stuff, everything goes through their quarterback, and he absolutely knows what he's doing, knows where to go with the ball. And he's surrounded by some really good players. Their receivers are very, very good. 82 is a very polished route runner. At number 3 is quick as a hiccup. He is fast as lightning and hard to cover in space. Very good tight ends, very cohesive in the offensive line, very well coached. And do a great job. So I don't know if y'all have watched much Duke tape, but y'all are gonna be in for a treat watching this quarterback play. Now he's a special player, and I don't have any doubt that we're gonna have our hands full with him.
The treat is going to be what happens when the defensive line gets his hands on him. But, that's what I said. And also, according to Dabo, Cutcliffe is apparently a party animal. They were talking about him dancing in the locker room last week. There was a video that appeared on social media. Mm-hmm. Apparently, according to Dabo, they've had some fun on those Nike trips, and Cutcliffe is the life of the party, if you will. He
seems like a really, really nice guy. He used to speak regularly when the Spartanburg Touchdown Club could have its luncheon on Friday of Shrine Bowl week before the NCAA killed that. He was always there. Every ACC coach was invited, and also, of course, the South Carolina coach was invited, and many of them would show up. Dabo always showed up. Cutcliffe was always one that showed up because they were recruiting the state of South Carolina, and he would get up and speak, and everybody would just be rolling in laughter because he's an old country boy, and he would tell great stories. By the way, Duke has allowed 21 sacks this season. Clemson's up around 40 sacks, I think, on the defensive side, or getting close to it. So there could be a sack party in the backfield. But Jones is a special talented quarterback. He'd have even greater numbers, but he missed some time with an injury in midseason. He's completing 61%, 16 touchdowns to 6 interceptions, just under 2,000 yards passing. And he runs pretty well. He had some big runs in his game last week. So he's a dangerous guy, but he's also big, and he'll be in that pocket. He'll be a major target for those crashing Clemson defensive ends.
Well, David Cutcliffe, as people will know, is the quarterback whisperer for the Mannings. And he did good for all the quarterbacks they had at Tennessee. Remember when Tennessee would always snatch a quarterback out of California, and that was David Cutcliffe. Said he was a calming influence on that headset for his quarterbacks playing at Tennessee. And I thought Ole Miss was kind of short-sighted in firing him as head coach. And he ended up having the offensive coordinator's job at Notre Dame, and then had that heart attack that set him back.
Tell you what, he's winning 7-8 games a year at Duke and occasionally popping up near the top of the division. That'll make them happy there at Duke. That's all they ask. Occasionally win a division and maybe get to the championship game. And, of course, they're going to bowl games, and they're winning bowl games. So, yeah, he's getting it done at a level at Duke that I'm sure they're very happy about. It's a way to get them through September and October until November gets there, when their lifeblood cranks up, known as hoops.
Well, you know that they can't compete with the salary cap that Coach K has to deal with. So
yeah. To recruiting now. South Carolina could be on the verge of a commitment from cornerback Johnny Dixon of Tampa. His high school career is over. He has taken officials to USC and Penn State, and those are the two recruiting him the hardest. He's in regular contact with Will Muschamp and Travaris Robinson. At this point, the Gamecocks are his favorite, he tells us. Quote, I like them a lot, to be honest with you. I'll be committed real soon. I should be. I just feel the most comfortable with them, and I can see the program growing. They say I have a chance to come in and compete for a spot in the lineup. Oh, really? I think anybody who's a cornerback who can walk and chew gum's got a chance to help at South Carolina, because they have such a need in the secondary.
You can backpedal better than the Ohio State media. You could probably play cornerback at South Carolina.
And not get injured.
He took his official to USC back in June, his official to Penn State in September, returning to USC with his mother for the Akron weekend. That's when a commitment to the Gamecocks is possible. But he says, he wouldn't commit to that commitment time 100%, but it's possible. At one point, Alabama, Miami, Ohio State, Louisville, West Virginia, Nebraska, Georgia, Florida State were on his offer list. USC assistant Kyle Krantz was down to check on him last week. He's expecting Penn State to come in this week, and he's also been hearing some from Florida recently. Clemson offered 2020 receiver J.J. Evans of Montevallo, Alabama. Auburn, Alabama, LSU, and Tennessee are among his other offers. And let's see, I'm trying to pick out some stuff I haven't already mentioned. I think that
you think that does it?
That is it. Actually, I mentioned that. The only fresh thing there was the story on Dixon. So there you go with recruiting. And a reminder, early signing period for basketball, baseball, other sports begins tomorrow, runs for a week. And also the signing period for financial aid agreements for football players begins tomorrow. So if you are a football player and you want to go ahead and sign your financial aid papers, Ryan Helinski is one who's going to do that. You can do that. And what it does, that's not the same thing as your letter of intent. It still does not bind you to the school, but it further binds the school to you. But what it also does from a school standpoint, now you can have unlimited contact with the player. You can even talk about the player publicly once he signs those papers.
You're telling me we can ask Muschamp about Helinski on Saturday?
Yes, you can.
Are you going to ask
assuming
him
that he announces, assuming that Helinski does sign the papers and announces something about it? You are, because Dabo Swinney has done this repeatedly over the years. Once those papers are signed, he's been more than willing to talk about players who have signed those papers who are coming in early. So if you have a question about Ryan Helinski, you can ask.
There's some Carolina fans who'd want him to be able to suit up for the Clemson game. No?
I don't think they could get him prepared in time.
Too soon?
Why are you coming down on Jake Bentley like that? He can handle his water. He can carry his own water against Clemson.
Water.
Is that a fact?
All right, top of the hour. We'll hear from Muschamp coming up.
Might want to have him suit up at safety instead.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
They are underway at the Colonial Life Arena. South Carolina out to a 5-0 lead. Campbell with a 3. Coatsar with a 2. And the Gamecocks have a total of 2 rebounds. And, Coatsar got a rebound. Frank's going to be happy.
Who was that coach that told the guy, say, congratulations, you got one more rebound than a dead man?
Yeah, who is that? That would be I've heard that phrase before, but I can't recall who said that. Wow. All right, 5-0 South Carolina out to the early lead. Want to mention other basketball tonight around the state. We've got Pfeiffer at Winthrop, Rhode Island at the College of Charleston. That should be a pretty good game.
That's a good game.
Rhode Island's a good team. So is Charleston. Gardner-Webb at Furman. Carver Bible at Wofford.
Okay.
Let me pray on that a moment. And South Carolina State at Charleston Southern.
Oh, an in-state.
Another good game.
An in-state
Another
match.
good game, yeah. So you wanted to say something?
I was going to say, for Carolina, no Alonzo Frink tonight, no Jermaine Couisnard for the continued academic situation.
And Georgia Tech got some good news. 6'8" post player James Banks, who transferred from Texas, has been given NCAA approval, allowing him to play right away. He played 2 seasons at Texas, got 2 years left. In 46 games there, he averaged 1.7 points, 2.3 rebounds, 10.7 minutes. Not sure if that's anything to get excited about, but he's obviously a big-bodied guy.
By the way, Carver Bible College is in Atlanta.
In Atlanta. Okay. It's a Talking Tuesday. You are welcome to talk with us, 800-956-7266. But we'd like to hear from the coaches on this Talking Tuesday. We heard a little bit from Dabo Sweeney on his opponent, Duke. How about Will Muschamp and his thoughts about the game coming up and the scenario coming up for his team? It's going to be senior night. It's going to be military appreciation night. But the seniors, 20 of them, will be saying bye-bye to the program. And today Muschamp talked about that.
Honoring 20 seniors that will walk on senior day and appreciate them. Small gesture of thank you for what they've done. This certainly is not goodbye, but certainly just saying thank you for what they've done for our program. We have 8 of them that have already graduated, 9 of them that will graduate in December. So 17 of the 20 will have completed their eligibility while they have their diplomas in their hand. And that's pretty impressive. And the other 3 are all on track to graduate in May. So really appreciate them and appreciate what they've done for our program. And they meant an awful lot, especially in a coaching change and transition and helping build the foundation of our program as we move forward. And we certainly appreciate that. Injury report, Jalen Dickerson has a hamstring. He'll be out this week. And Aaron Sterling probably will not be back this week with the knee. We're still kind of work through that and see what we need to do as we move forward. As far as that's concerned, I'll open up for any questions.
Well, in the RPO package, is that strictly up to Jake to decide on the run or the pass? Or do you guys call in plays and say, well, we're looking for the pass here, or is it always his decision?
It's his decision. I think that there are certain sequences that we will go into a game that we may give him some guidelines on situationally whether we want to hand the ball off or throw the ball. But the other day it was all based on the look, and we felt good about the decisions that were made. Obviously, we didn't get the results we wanted, and that's unfortunate. But we'll go back and continue to look at the situation. What do we need to do better to put our guys in better situation to be successful?
Well, have you gotten a chance to look at that third quarter fumble that was not reviewed, and what did you see, and how'd that impact?
Yeah, once forward progress is stopped, it is now not a reviewable play. And I knew that on the field, number one. Number two, the whistle had blown. Number three, no official had reacted to the ball being recovered by J.C. Horn or stripped by J.C. Horn and returned down the sideline. So number one, the play can't be reviewed once forward progress is stopped. Forward progress has been stopped because the whistle had blown. And I had a communication with the official on the sideline. I said, did forward progress stop? And he said, the whistle was blown, coach. And I said, well, are they looking at it upstairs? He said, you know the rule. And I do know the rule. So forward progress has stopped. It is no longer a reviewable play. And so that's the situation.
I'm guessing you're probably not wired to think this way, but have you thought about what could have been with DJ and Bryson had those guys been able to be on the field for more than just a 3-game stretch for these last couple seasons?
Sure. I mean, those guys are both really good players, and just thinking in terms of last night, kind of our seniors, and Bryson's a guy that's been really special to me. He's a a guy that we've known for a long time, Cedar Grove High School, had a very difficult junior season, supposed to be a senior season last year with the labrum and having the surgery, and then coming, back this year and really playing at a high level, playing extremely hard, very productive, and playing at a high level, and to have the ankle injury, and hopefully we'll get him back for the bowl game. But appreciate everything he's done for us. But he and DJ are both guys that we were, in training camp, looked really good on the edges, quite frankly, and being stronger on the edges with the both of those guys playing at a high level. But again, wish we'd had Bryson, down this stretch here would have helped us.
Yeah, you hate that the Gamecocks have really been a little shorthanded on defense all season long, from Wadham going out, through safeties going out, Bryson Allen Williams now being out again. That hurts. There's no question about it. It's a shame that you can't stay healthy, and maybe they've got to look at some things in their strength and conditioning. I don't know how many of these injuries are related to
a lot of it's freak stuff. A lot
freak
of it's,
stuff
a lot of
or
it's freak
bad
stuff.
hits, but and I know this time of year everybody's a little bit nicked up, banged up, but
I tell you how you can get rid of that. 3 and outs. I keep telling you, that defense stays on the field a long time, even in their wins. And let's face it, I think a lot of guys make awkward movements when they either get in a tight situation or they're tired.
Well, I think a lot of where their defense, I guess, has made its hay is they've tried to keep everything in front of them and played a lot of zone coverage. They don't blitz a lot, and they don't send a lot of people, and I think a lot of that also has to do with the fact that they're deficient at the linebacker position.
Well, your point is well made. The Gamecocks are 47th nationally, but 9th in the SEC in third down conversion defense.
And that was a spot last year where they were actually good.
And in fourth down conversion defense, they're 84th nationally and 13th in the SEC. So they do stay on the field there a little bit longer because of their inability to stop people on third down. I want to go back to something he said. I was trying to listen to this from the post game on Saturday, and he didn't get a chance to find it on the audio, but I could have sworn he said after the game on Saturday when asked about the J.C. Horn strip situation, could have sworn he said the officials told him they were reviewing it. And that's why, because he was being asked why he didn't call a timeout to give him a chance to review it. And he said, I could have sworn he said after the game, well, the officials told me they'll be reviewing it. They're in the process of reviewing it. I didn't want to spend a timeout right then and there. And plus he told me that. And the question was, was the whistle blown at that particular point in time? And maybe that was a bone of contention as well.
I can't fault him for saying differently in the heat of the moment. It's right after the game. Maybe after reevaluation,
I don't know if he knew at that time the whistle had blown.
I don't know.
Because
but I mean, he said today that he knew.
Didn't hear whistle.
He said today, he said, I know the rule. He said, because he said the official said to him, Coach, you know the rule. And he goes, yes, I know the rule. But I mean, it just sounds to me that maybe he wasn't as clear on the rule as it was happening during the game. If he had known the rule, there would have been no question about him asking the official because there would be no review.
I think we all know that you can't review forward progress. It's just not.
I didn't know that. I don't know all the rules when it comes to what you can and can't review.
I knew that.
I don't think he knew that.
Well, I mean, there's nothing that you don't know.
Because there's some people on the field said they heard a whistle, and some people on the field said they didn't hear a whistle.
Can't write Sanskrit.
13-4 USC is on top of Norfolk State. Gamecocks are shooting about 42% from the floor.
It's early.
Furman is leading Gardner-Webb 11-9 in the first half of that game. The College of Charleston and Rhode Island are underway in Charleston. It's 4-4 between the Rams. The Rams, right? Rhode Island Rams and the Cougars.
Yes.
Winthrop out to a 20-11 lead on Pfeiffer.
And Rhode Island, of course, breaking in a new coach because their coach, Mr. Hurley, hauled to Connecticut.
Yeah, they made a pretty good run last year, did they not? Into the tournament and all that.
We have the new college football playoff rankings, by the way.
Oh, that's right. It's Tuesday night.
Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, Michigan, your top 4. Georgia, 5. Oklahoma, 6. 7, LSU. Washington State, West Virginia, and Ohio State round out your top 10.
Not giving Washington State enough love.
Yeah,
they don't stay up late to see those games.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Under 12 timeout at Colonial Lamp Arena, 16-6 in favor of the Gamecocks, 11:52 to play. A.J. Lawson has 6 points, 2 of 5 from the field, 2 of 4 from downtown, including one bank shot where it's unclear whether he called glass or not. But Carolina as a team shooting 6 of 13, much better stat this week. Rebounds also in their favor, 7 to 5. They have a couple of them also on the offensive glass, so that has helped them as well. South Carolina has only had 3 turnovers. Norfolk State has had 5.
Pause. Thought we were going to do Dabo.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know if you had something else to add about what's going on with you were reviewing the audio.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying what my interpretation, for what it's worth. I mean, this really isn't an issue. I feel like I'm making something out of nothing here. It's just something to talk about. But, I went back and listened to the post-game audio from what was up on Saturday, and Muschamp said then that he was told by the officials, because he was asked why, I think part of the question was, why didn't you use a timeout so that play could be replayed and reviewed and perhaps reversed? Okay, it's all part of the deal. You review it when there is a replay and a review for potential reverse. And he said then that the official, he asked the official, and the official told him it was being reviewed. And he also said he thought he heard a whistle. But what the answer to the media that I could pick up was that he was told it was being reviewed. Thus, there was no reason to use a timeout to ask for a review. Then today at his press conference, saying that he knew the rule, he said that the officials told him that it couldn't be reviewed. It wasn't a reviewable play. And thus, it's irrelevant regarding the use of the timeout because it wasn't a reviewable play. That's my interpretation of what was said today compared to what was said after the game.
Every play is reviewed as a rule, whether it's reviewable
but
or
not for reverse purposes.
But here's the point.
There's certain plays that will not be reviewed for the standpoint of changing a call.
That's why when they say it on the field, it's under further review. Every play is reviewed. It was not eligible for further review.
I don't understand. I mean, every play is reviewed.
Every play that they run in the game.
Let's try and talk calmly.
Every play that they review in the game,
right,
is reviewed
by
upstairs by the upstairs booth.
For what purpose?
To see if it's worth further review.
No. There are certain plays that cannot be reviewed. Do you agree with that?
Every play is looked at. Yes.
Do you agree that there are certain calls that cannot be reviewed?
Yes.
That is what Muschamp said today. That is not what he said
misunderstanding
on
the word
Saturday.
Review.
No, I'm not.
Review does not mean go upstairs for a review from the booth. Every play in the booth is reviewed as a rule. Now, it's not necessarily put forth to a further review that could possibly reverse the call.
But reviewing a play, if what you're saying is correct, and I don't believe it is.
It is.
I'd have to see the rules.
Talk to people who are rules officials. That's why the terminology they use is used.
Reviewing a play in the booth that's not reviewable is a waste of everybody's time.
Yeah, but
except for their own. But what good does it do to the people on the field?
But that's why they say under further. That's why they use the term.
That's the terminology that
further
they use.
review, because they review the plays ostensibly.
Yeah, okay, but that doesn't matter if the play is not reviewable by the rules. What difference does it make? Only the plays that can be reviewed are worth being talked about here.
What difference it makes is that when they look at those,
if it's a non-reviewable play, if you can't reverse the call, but you're upstairs reviewing it, what good does it do?
They can review what the call was made. If the call was made that it was a down by contact, that means they say they can't put it under further review.
Yeah,
but if it's that's fine, I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But in this particular case, Muschamp said today he was told it was not a reviewable play. Go back and listen to what he said.
I understand what he said.
So it's not reviewable.
But
whether they reviewed it upstairs or not, it wasn't reviewable.
It's not eligible for further review. Every play is reviewable.
No, but
you can't change it. You're misunderstanding the way the English language works here.
I understand. I've been speaking English longer than you've been alive. Okay,
both of you missed a clear point.
Let me just say this. If you can't reverse the play, if it's a rule, if it's a play that falls under the column of not reversible or not, there are also plays that are referred to as non-reviewable.
Right. Pass interference.
So reviewing them, as you say, means nothing. it means
Well,
nothing.
well, here's the key point, though. In this particular review, the rule is after the whistle blows and forward progress is stopped, you can't review.
Correct.
But one of the parts of the review is they wanted to make sure when the whistle blew. So if the whistle would have blown after the guy, they would have had a call, they could have reversed the call. But they heard the whistle before, and that's why it was unreviewed.
The only thing I'm bringing up is the two different interpretations, I guess, by Muschamp from after the game on Saturday and what he said today.
I thought it was the same interpretation.
No, you didn't listen. Well, you didn't hear. Did you hear what he said after the game?
I heard that, but he said at the time, I thought I heard a whistle, but I wasn't sure, which makes me think that he thought he was reviewing it to make sure that whistle blew before the ball came loose. Now, once they came to him and said the whistle had blown, then he said there was no use in.
The officials upstairs look at every play. There are some plays that are not eligible for further review.
Mm-hmm.
Down by contact is one of them. Period. End of discussion.
Down by contact is not reviewable.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. I'm not
It's
arguing.
not eligible for further review.
They can review every play, but my point is that there are plays that aren't reviewable or reversible, however you want to word it. And what Muschamp said this afternoon at his press conference was that it was not a reviewable play. I think those were his words. It was not a reviewable play. After the game, he said, they told me they're reviewing it. But he said he thought he heard a whistle. So I'm just bringing up the difference in what was said after the game and what was said today.
I think you're parsing his language a tad too
I don't
carefully
think I'm
when
parsing
it
anything.
Comes to
we'll listen to it again here in a moment. Go ahead.
We don't have enough time to go to Dabo a little bit. We have a little bit of time to go to Dabo. Here's a little bit what he had to say
the whistle blow.
On how deep his team has been and how he has handled adversity.
Yeah, I don't know if I said this is my best, maybe my deepest team on paper. We'll see if it turns out to be the best team, but I definitely think that our depth has played out like I thought it would, for sure. Just our most experienced team, our deepest team.
Okay, you hear that?
So that has proved to be the case. I mean, we've played a ton of guys. I think we've been able to withstand an injury here or there, a guy here or there, without having too much drama. And then but you're going into it and you're like, okay, well, how's it all going to come together? What's going to be the selflessness of the team? The chemistry, the leadership, well, all of that stuff, all these things that the intangibles. How will that all come together with what's on paper? And it's these guys have done an amazing job. They really have taken pride in just getting ready every week and being about the right things. And then, especially with some of the young guys that have stepped in and kind of joined the group. Obviously, Trevor, the situation there. It's been a lot of fun, but hopefully we can stay healthy. Because I do think we've developed the depth like I hope we would, and we'll see. I mean, people measure best teams by championships typically. So right now we've won a division championship, and that's it.
As the two of you keep arguing back and forth,
Not arguing. I'm just trying to point out the differences in what was said, and I'm done with it. Go ahead.
Also asked Coach Dabo Sweeney that in a
Did Dabo just talk? Were we just listening to him?
We were listening to Dabo. There was a question also we didn't get to, and
are they playing this weekend?
They're playing Duke. They're playing Duke.
Hey, is Zion Williamson in this game? Is he going to play tight end for Duke?
No.
One of the things I asked Dabo was about how they've handled adversity when it comes to the fact that they really haven't had experience with a lot of adversity over the last month, and he countered by saying, I think we've had a lot of adversity. We had a quarterback leave. We had a player die, a former player die. We had a situation of just going through the grind of the season. And, we had the Syracuse game and the A&M game. We had adversity last weekend. I would argue they probably didn't. But, again, part of the reason why.
There was no mustard on my hot dog today.
23-12. USC is up. Furman's up 28-20. Charleston's up 16-10. Winthrop's up 34-20.
I'll see you over there for this fascinating basketball game.
Save me some chips.
Yeah.
All right, we'll be right back. KT, Kerry Tharp going to talk some David Pearson coming up.
The guys are always checking email. Send your comments or questions to talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, more of Sports Talk from Columbia's Main Street.
Waiting on Kerry Tharp to catch up with us here for his Tuesday night visit with us on Sports Talk. Of course, the sad news that came out last night while we were on the air, the passing of David Pearson at the age of 83, the Spartanburg native resident. What a fabulous career he had in NASCAR, won 105 races and only 574 starts, second most to Richard Petty. Won titles in 66, 68, and 69. And what was interesting to me in reading stories about him overnight is that in see if I can find this stat. Head-to-head with Richard Petty. I was looking for this stat. Head-to-head with Richard Petty. He actually, I think, won. Let's see. I'm trying to remember what this stat was. It was something in comparison to with Richard Petty, and I can't find it now. But it was a positive stat comparing his career to that of Richard Petty, and now I can't find it. But anyway, inducted into the second class of the NASCAR Hall of Fame back in 2011, 10-time winner at Darlington. I think that's where he established much of his fame because he truly owned that track and drove it like nobody else. And that's a perfect lead-in to our visit with Kerry Tharp, president of Darlington Raceway. Good to have you, KT. How are you?
I'm doing okay, Phil. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir. Talking about David Pearson. Kind of overshadows everything right now. I know it's championship week, but David Pearson, a giant in the sport, a giant sportsman here in the state of South Carolina, a legend. And I know you folks at Darlington in particular, this hits really close to home because you guys were so close to him.
Well, there's no question, Phil, and we heard news last night of David's passing, sad day. Not only for Darlington Raceway, but for the entire sport in the state of South Carolina. You know, he was kind of larger than life, 103 wins in the Cup Series. And as I heard you say, 10 wins at Darlington, and that's a record. And I'm not sure if that record will be broken. And so, you know, he's an old South Carolina boy that as he used to say, I'm just a country boy that likes to race. And that's what he was. And with David Pearson, what you saw was what you got. Wasn't the most flamboyant, wasn't the most, guy that got out there in front of everybody, but he was a great race car driver and a great competitor. And he's going to be missed.
Yes.
And, not only in the state of South Carolina was he a legend, but certainly in the sport of NASCAR.
Our good friend, the bad boy, who needs no further introduction. You know who the bad boy is. Just sent me a note. I was searching for this stat that I saw, and I couldn't recall it. He just texted to me. Pearson and Petty finished 1-2 63 times in their careers, and Pearson won 33 of the 63. Right. I mean, that's right. That was great racing back then. Those two guys forever linked through the history of NASCAR and such great competitors. And I can remember the few times that we'd have David Pearson on Sports Talk, and he was always so gracious and such a country gentleman. And of course, I'll never forget the time in a spring when Darlington had him in to promote the track and had him driving a real race car, a real NASCAR, and giving us a ride around Darlington, giving each member of the media like 2 laps around Darlington at full speed. With David Pearson at the wheel. That was way too cool. And you could just tell, even then, he just loved the heck out of driving around Darlington.
Well, there's no question. And, he was a fierce competitor. And you bring up the stories about Petty. You know, Richard Petty has said all along that the toughest racer he ever competed against was David Pearson. And I think they brought out the best in one another. And, the old Silver Fox, 103 wins. He only raced about half as many races as Richard Petty did. And so, I don't think he hardly ever even raced a full-time schedule. He won 3 championships. And he was just one of those guys that people could relate to. I read a story last night that I thought was pretty amusing. They said, once you saw David Pearson flick the cigarette out of his car with about 20 laps to go, you knew that it was game on. And so, you know, he's a guy that sometimes people think is larger than life. And, you know, and certainly in the state of South Carolina, I have to say he goes down as one of the top sportsmen that the state has produced. And this state has certainly produced a great many of them. But, you know, he stuck to his roots. I don't think he ever left the Spartanburg area. And like I said, he's going to be missed. And I think NASCAR was better off, and certainly Darlington Raceway was better off to have David Pearson as part of it.
Absolutely. One other thing I remembered about that trip around the track with him, and they tried to make his car up to be as realistic as possible to what he used to drive. And correct me if I'm wrong about this, but if I remember correctly, they used to tape 5 sticks of gum to the dashboard, one for each 100 miles of the Bojangles Southern 500. And so I guess, you know, he would chew one stick every 100 miles to remind him how much further he had to go in the race. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. And that's certainly a story that has been told many, many times. But yeah, they would stick those 5 pieces of gum there. And he knew as he started chewing each stick of gum, how much more he had to go in that race. But, you know, 10 wins at Darlington. Let's think about that. That's amazing. And I think Dale Earnhardt has 9, Jeff Gordon 7. But I don't think that record will ever be broken, to be honest with you. It's just not that many people, or the longevity of it, I don't think is going to be such that it could be broken. So our hats off to David Pearson, and you know, we'll always remember it.
Yeah, you know, in his driving style, KT, he was one. He never forced the issue. He would sometimes, especially at Darlington, where I would see him, you know, he would just sort of. I think that his thinking was stay out of trouble, hang back in the pack, let everybody else wreck out or scrape the wall, and then I'll make my move in the last 100 laps. And, man, he would hit his marks, and he would just be so smooth going through the corners. I think that was the secret, a lot of it, to his success there.
There's no question. He was a very patient driver, as you said. You know, he wouldn't force the issue. He wouldn't try to win the race in the first 100 laps. But he certainly would try to win the race in the final 100 laps. And so, you know, he would pick and choose his moments, and you know, he might be running 8th, 9th for most of the race, and then all of a sudden you look up with about 10, 15 laps to go, and Pearson's running up front. And he just had that uncanny ability of saving his equipment, being patient, knowing when to make the right moves, and certainly he had the competitive nature of a lion.
All right, let's talk quickly about the championship 4. So you got the big 3 plus 1, and it's a good-looking group. Who's going to emerge, you think, on Sunday?
I do think it's a good group, Phil. I think these are the 4 best drivers throughout the course of the season. As you mentioned, you had the big 3, and then you had Logano. He won a couple times and was very, very strong most of the season. So, you know, it's going to be, I think, whoever is going to be the champion is going to have to win the race. We've seen that the last 4 years. And, you know, you would think that Harvick or Kyle Busch would be the 2 favorites, which I think they are. And for some reason, I'm leaning with Kyle Busch, the 18 car. I just think for some reason he's going to win on Sunday.
I would just love, knowing the kind of personalities Harvick and, well, really all of them, but Harvick and Busch, if we could get those 2 running 1-2 in the last 10 laps and within, you know, being able to reach one another, that would make for an incredible finish, because somebody's going to eat some concrete.
Well, what would it mean for Truex to win another one?
Well, that's a great point, Tom.
In a row,
for him to, you know, for him to have back-to-back wins, championships, especially with this team, you know, going away this year, that would be quite the storybook. Or even Logano, he's never won a championship. So I think there's a lot of great storylines out there.
KT, we thank you, man. Enjoy the championship week at Homestead. We'll talk to you one final time on the season next week.
Sounds good. I appreciate it, guys.
Thank you. Kerry Tharp, president of Darlington, sharing some great moments and memories about David Pearson with us here on Sports Talk, and we'll be right back.
The guys are always checking email. Send your comments or questions to talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, more of Sports Talk from Columbia's Main Street.
Let's give you the high school report tonight, brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. With Fave Rates from Farm Bureau Insurance, you get all of your favorite things like competitive rates, local agents, great claims service for all your auto, home, and life insurance needs. Get a no-obligation quote today at faverates.com. I mentioned the preseason high school basketball polls are out from the South Carolina Basketball Coaches Association. They also released their list of the top boys and girls players in the state for this season, what they call the elite boys and the elite girls. So your elite boys, Tommy Bruner, Gray Collegiate, Calvin Felder, Sumter, Trey Hannibal, Hartsville, P.J. Hall Jr. from Dorman, Trey Jackson of Blythewood, Dylan Jones Jr. from Keenan, Russell Jones, Westwood, Miles Tate Jr. from Dorman, Malcolm Wilson of Ridgeview. On the girls' side, Unique Drake, Westwood, Naya Leveretterer from Westwood. Boy, Westwood must be loaded. Ann Hamilton Leroy of Seneca, Taylor Lewis of Spring Valley, Loyal McQueen of Wilson, Danae McNeil of Swansea, Quadijah Moore of Emerald, Shayla Nelson of Goose Creek, and Janelle Sindab of Mullins. There you go with the high school report for tonight. Update basketball very quickly. Over at the CLA, it's 35-20 USC, 1:09 to go. Gravit's having a good game. He's got 10 points coming in off the bench tonight, so he's got 10 to lead the Gamecocks. Hasse has got 3 rebounds. Other scores, we have got, let's see, Furman up on Gardner-Webb at the half, 46-33. Charleston leading Rhode Island 29-18 late in the half. Winthrop up on Pfeiffer late in the half, 61-35. And we have got Wofford at the half leading Carver 58-22. Okay. Some final words from Will Muschamp from his press conference today. One of the big concerns this week, tackling. Poor tackling cost them against Florida. He talked about getting better in that area.
We're a little thin at the safety position. We're a little banged up at the safety position. We haven't been as productive at the linebacker position as we'd like to be, just quite frankly. And I think those two positions have really hurt us as far as explosive plays. And I think you go back to last year, Chris Lamons and DJ Smith were both very good tacklers. And they when the ball did hit the second level, in a lot of those situations, the ball was on the ground from a standpoint of a 6 or 8 yard gain as opposed to a 20-yard gain in an explosive run. I think things have kind of snowballed on us. We got wore down in the fourth quarter, in our last ball game and struggled to answer, in those situations. So I think there's a combination of things that have affected the tackling, and obviously we continue to work on it.
Well, in the NFL and in college for about 10 years, people have been saying, tackling's kind of a lost art, and that maybe limited practice time is a big reason for that. Mm-hmm. What about other things like, are afraid of targeting calls, emphasizing turnovers a lot? What about all that stuff?
Gene, I think that has a small part to do with it. I wouldn't say that it has a huge part to do with it. I think that targeting is an issue, and we talk to our players all the time about lowering their targets, not leading with the crown of the helmet. Those are all things that we talk to our players constantly about, lowering their targets. I mean, those are things we're constantly talking about. We do sometimes make mistakes as far as trying to create a turnover instead of securing the tackle. And that's a judgment and a hard judgment when a 220-pounder is running at you, and you got to be able to get the guy on the ground, bottom line. And that's the most important thing. So I do think those factors have a small portion of it. But I think, again, tackling a lot too is want to. You got to really want to throw your face in the fan and enjoy it. And those are, got to continue to recruit to that.
Donnell Stanley's technically a junior now, but he's walking. Has he communicated to you that this is his last year?
Yeah, no, I should have said that, Josh. I apologize. So Nick Harvey is not going to walk, and we're trying to apply for another season through our compliance office. We have not heard on that yet as we speak. Eldridge Thompson is going to walk. His family had already planned to be here, but we are applying for an extra year for Eldridge. And Donnell Stanley family was going to be here anyways. He has planned to walk and has not made a decision, and we'll make that decision after our bowl game. And he and I communicated that in previous time in our open date. And I think those are the only three guys that we had talked about that you might have questions on.
One of the seniors that'll be honored Saturday is probably got the most experience is Zach Bailey.
Mm-hmm.
What has he meant to the program, and how have you seen him progress this year?
Just a steady performer. You know what you're going to get every day on the practice field. Tough, hard-nosed, physical. He's been a really good football player for us here at South Carolina. But a guy that, the consistency that Zach brings every day to me is what impresses you, as far as just a guy that comes to work every day with his lunch pail and goes to work. And we'll miss Zach.
There you go, Will Muschamp from his press conference earlier today.
If I'm Donnell Stanley and I got a 6th year and I'm thinking, Coach, I may come back and I may not come back, but I don't want to walk. I want to ride a horse into the stadium because I heard he likes to ride horses.
He does. Big old country boy.
Go over to the equestrian coach and get one of those horses. See him ride it. That would turn the fans on, I think.
That was one of his pictures from recruiting days, him sitting on a horse with a cowboy hat on. The poor horse was like, I can't hold this up much longer. You're talking 300-plus pounds. You'd love to see him. I mean, selfishly, if you're a Gamecock fan, you'd love to see all those guys come back because it only helps your team. And Clemson was very fortunate in those guys coming back, and look what it's meant to them. But also, older guys are thinking about, man, I got to start my career.
Mm-hmm.
I want to start my families. I got to get out and make some money, maybe in the league, maybe not. I've been through this for so many years, a 6th year. Imagine being in college 6 years. Mm-hmm. But maybe it's something he'll want to do. Yeah.
Well, the only way I could think of him coming back a 6th year, Phil, is this would be his 2nd straight year at the center position.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would make him tremendously more valuable to the NFL team, knowing that he can play guard and also play at the center.
Play all 3 spots.
Mm-hmm.
He's played all 3.
Mm-hmm.
Quickly, let's go to Mike in Dillon. Hello, Mike. Welcome into Sports Talk.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey,
I just got a question. I saw a little bit of the game on Saturday, and the Carolina and Florida game. The number 10 on defense, I saw he was getting ran over a lot. Even one time by the quarterback. I mean, they flat just ran over this guy. I felt kind of terrible for him. But my question was, how does a fight like that get a starting position?
I believe you're talking about number 10 would be R.J. Roderick, freshman safety, and a guy that really, had their safety stayed healthy, he might not have been in that position. Let me double check the number. I'm pretty sure I'm right on that. That 10 is Roderick. And, he's just a freshman out there. They really like him a lot. They love his overall athleticism. And look, that quarterback is 6'5" and about what?
220? Well, he's 6'6".
230.
Yeah,
he's a load, man. And I mean,
6'6".
he's going to hit you. He's going to lower when they're running that power, that quarterback power. I mean, he's going to drag some people when he gets. Yeah, it is R.J. Roderick.
Yeah,
he's going to drag some people in the second level with him because he's bigger than the linebackers.
And I will tell you this: Roderick is breaking in a new position. In fact, I think he played option quarterback in high school.
Yeah, athlete.
So he's changed. He's changing. Not only does he need a little bit more strength, which we would get from aging from his freshman to his sophomore year, but he's also learning a new position.
All right, update the basketball for you one final time. At the half, USC's up 37-23, shooting 43%, 6 of 20 from 3, 5 of 9 from the line, and 20 rebounds to 13, so they're winning the rebounding battle. Oh, leading scorer for the Gamecocks at this point would be Gravitt with 10. All right, elsewhere, Charleston Southern leading South Carolina State 24-19. Furman up on Gardner-Webb 46-33. Charleston on Rhode Island 31-19. Winthrop at the half 73-42 on Pfeiffer. And at the half, early second half, Wofford 58-22 on Carver. That'll do it. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.